Okay, so this may be the last time he addressed the media, Lindsey Graham. And just to give you a heads up on how this works, um, we're in some trouble in South Carolina now because it's an unknown. I've seen some misinformation that people are putting out there. Now we've been talking a lot about Kentucky and Mitch McConnell, and the situation with Mitch McConnell and what happens with Mitch McConnell if his seat is vacated is much different than South Carolina. Now, it is commonly believed, and I subscribe to this, that the Republican rhino establishment of Thune and the Bushes and all the rest are involved in a massive cover-up with Senator Mitch McConnell because under Kentucky law, the governor, who's a Democrat, by the way, in Kentucky, does not appoint the replacement to finish out McConnell's term. There's a special election that must be held within a month of the seat being empty, whether it's by resignation or death. That's in Kentucky. In South Carolina, it's a little different and much messier. McConnell wasn't running for re-election, so there was something in place already. Plus, we have this special election thing that could change everything. South Carolina, it doesn't work exactly the same way. The governor can appoint a replacement to finish out the term. At least that's what's being reported this morning. Or he could have a special election. Both are being reported, but the governor can appoint a replacement interim senator for the time being because there's a primary coming up. However, Senator Graham was running for re-election, and he was a shoo-in. There was no question that Lindsey Graham was going to be reelected. Now we have an unknown. We have an unknown in South Carolina. That doesn't mean there's going to be a Democrat victor come November, but it's certainly possible at this point because we don't have the incumbent lock with Lindsey Graham. And I'll tell you another thing. I don't trust the Kentucky Republicans. They're all low-life snakes, okay? McConnell and Rand Paul are snakes that have been undermining the president in both of his terms. So you can't trust what Kentucky does. Even if they get a Republican, it could very well be a fake Republican rhino. And South Carolina may be in play. We don't know. Anyone who gives analysis on the situation in South Carolina now with the death of Lindsey Graham, it's all guesswork. There's no way to analyze and give any real prediction based on anything of how the election will turn out in South Carolina now. The governor can appoint an interim, and hopefully he'll appoint someone good, but we don't know who's on deck. Lindsey Graham is a very well-liked man by everyone. And what was a sure bet now, the re-election of Lindsey Graham, is not. And another thing, too, it's more than just about getting a Republican in the seat. You want a Republican in the seat that's going to back up the president, but also whoever comes in loses all the seniority that Senator Lindsey Graham has in the Senate. So whoever comes in is a freshman senator now. They're not leading committees. They're not leading the press conferences. They're not forwarding the narrative. You know what I mean? Lindsey Graham, because of his seniority, was leading the narrative, leading committees, getting things done. And whoever replaces him loses all of that. So no, it is, other than just the personal loss that we lost a man that's liked by everyone, including the president, we've lost the sure bet of a Republican seat. Is South Carolina a safe Republican seat? No one knows. We don't know. We really don't. So it may not be a safe Republican seat right now. We don't know who's coming up through the ranks. And things are we're getting so close now. It's not like in Kentucky, there's a primary process that's going to happen that was already in the works because McConnell wasn't running. The purpose of the primary, there's several purposes of a primary, but one of the things a primary does is vet. You find things out about candidates. And the closer you get, the less vetting. So someone could be picked, and with the scrutiny people get today, we may find something out about them that just is devastating a month or two from now, right? I mean, so you lose the vetting process when you punch somebody in so quickly to the primary and the general election. It just, you bring people that are unknowns or been out of the mix for a while, or are not known nationally, or maybe are big in South Carolina, but they haven't been looked at nationally, and then people start looking at them in ways they weren't looked at before, and then you find out something, and then it's over for them. So South Carolina, with the passing of Lindsey Graham, is in play as of this moment. Now, I will say that so far as whether or not Lindsey Graham died of natural causes with a cardiac arrest, which certainly is possible, or was assassinated, I'm going to put the odds of assassination at 50% right now odds, based on what we now know, because he was a leading attacker of Putin, and the Iranians have been out there putting out images of Lindsey Graham with a target on his head, okay? And the Iranians just had a foiled assassination attempt against President Trump. So based on what we know right now, I'm going to put 50-50 if this was natural causes or assassination. All right, your thoughts are certainly welcome. The number is 888-465-2631. You're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Good morning, Brian Doc from Texas.
Hey, Texas. What's up?
Hey, man. Hey, how are you this morning?
Not well. I mean, I like Lindsey Graham, and it's I'm shocked.
Yeah, I went out this morning and I was looking at, and I looked at my phone this morning. And I said, I thought they were saying Mitch. Then I said, no, that's Lindsey.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So was he? I know it's crazy. Was he? I don't remember. Was he running for office again?
Yeah, he was up for re-election, and he was expected to win by a mile. I mean, it was not even debatable. Now you Democrats may have a chance to take a Senate seat. Who knows?
Okay. I'm just wondering. I mean, he just came back from Ukraine?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he just met with Zelensky and just came back from Ukraine. The Russians hate him, and the Iranians have been calling for his assassination. And now I know they said his office said a short illness. I mean, what does that mean? And if he was sick, he wouldn't have flown to Ukraine 2 days ago.
Nine times, Brian, whenever they say that 9 shots out of 10, he probably had a stroke or heart attack.
Well, they're saying that paramedics were called because of a cardiac arrest, which was the same call they got on Mitch McConnell.
That's what it was.
We don't know. We don't know that.
We don't. Nobody knows, Brian. At his age, all that traveling, that's not good. 'Cause sitting on those planes like that, it could have been a blood.
Well, certainly, flying can be deadly, and a lot of times, people fly. I've talked about this before. There's a YouTuber that died in December that I was a big fan of, Adam the Woo. He was my age, and he died of a heart attack unexpectedly. He just came back from a long flight from Europe. And, people sit in these planes, and then they get back, and then they have heart attacks. That is certainly common. Air track, having your legs up in these things and everything else. People come back from long airline trips and have heart attacks all the time. It is very common, and that certainly is possible. However, Doc, when you look at someone who the Iranians have been calling for the assassination of just this week at the funeral of the Ayatollah, after they attempted to assassinate the president this week, and then here he is in Ukraine 2 days ago calling out Putin. Believe me, they're looking into whether the president is looking into this as to whether or not it was natural causes or an assassination.
It could have been natural causes. Just stop saying it could have been natural causes.
But it also could have been an assassination.
It could have been natural causes. Stop saying that. It could have been natural causes.
What do you mean stop saying? Because
you don't know.
What do we know? What we talk about.
Get frustrated with people. Talk about stuff they don't know.
No, I know. Excuse me. I am giving expert analysis of the news as it breaks, and we're down. Think about this now. We are down 2 senior Republican United States senators. These are people that are in the top 10 most powerful people in the United States government. And you know, so I'm sorry to tell you, when you have two U.S. senators that are down like this, especially one that a nation we're at war at has been calling for the assassination of, Lindsey Graham, and he's taken on Putin like this, and Putin has a history of having political opponents dropping dead. You have to look, well, wait a minute, this is odd. Could this have happened? These aren't just two regular guys.
And you know what, Brian? Listen to you say that. If all this is true, why are you traveling? I stay inside the United States. If I know somebody after me, you know what? I'm not leaving the United States. I'm good. I'll talk to you on.
All right. Well, appreciate the call. I mean, these people, they just don't get it. They don't get it. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. I mean, we're talking specifically about Lindsey Graham. Okay. McConnell's a little different, but talking specifically about Lindsey Graham, we have the Iranians calling for his assassination at the Ayatollah's funeral with the president. If you haven't seen it, you will see it all over X. And he is not just a senior United States senator, Lindsey Graham, he's got the ear of the president. And he has been a big thorn in the side of Vladimir Putin during the, I can't believe 5 years, can't believe it's been that long, of the Ukraine war. So to run around and say that it's not possible, and if you notice what they said from his office, right? They said a brief and sudden illness. A brief and sudden illness. What does that tell you? How many people do you know? It's one thing it is like I was talking about Adam the Woo. Any of you guys remember Adam the Woo here on YouTube? If you watch on YouTube. He came back from a foreign trip unexpectedly, cardiac arrest, died in his bed. But Lindsey Graham's staff on the official Lindsey Graham X posted after a short illness. After a brief and sudden illness, they said. Brief and sudden illness. And then he died from a cardiac arrest in his home. Brief and sudden illness. While people die without symptoms of heart attacks all the time, you hear me talk about this every day on the program. I don't say they die of a cardiac arrest after brief and sudden illnesses. They come out of the blue. And if he was sick, he would not have gone to Ukraine. In fact, if he were sick, he might have not come back to the United States. He might have flown to a U.S. military hospital in Germany. So what I want to know is, when did this brief and sudden illness come on? And what were his symptoms? Let me read from the New York Post. Let's see if we get any new information. This is the New York Post. U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican from South Carolina, died Saturday following a brief illness at the age of 71. Lindsey Graham's office posted this on his official X. On the evening of Saturday, July 11, U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham passed away from a brief and sudden illness. Senator Graham's family appreciates prayers at this time and asks for privacy during this incredibly difficult period. The cause of death was not immediately revealed, they write. Now, since then, we've heard cardiac arrest. Emergency officials responded to Senator Graham's Capitol Hill home at around 8:30 p.m. when they received a report about an individual suffering from chest pains, the Washington Post reported. Also citing police scanner audio that they were monitoring. I'm shocked. Washington Post monitoring police scanners. I'm in shock that they're doing actual reporting over there. Officials performed CPR as he went into cardiac arrest nearly a half hour later. Okay, so there was this brief and sudden illness that resulted in 9/11 being called, and then he had cardiac arrest half an hour later, okay? Let me go back. Emergency, let me read, this is the New York Post. See, this isn't a sudden, the way this is coming down, this isn't a sudden cardiac arrest out of the blue. Listen to this. Emergency officials responded to Senator Graham's Capitol Hill home at around 8:30 p.m. when they received a report about an individual suffering from chest pains, the Washington Post reported, citing police scanner radio. Officials performed CPR as he went into cardiac arrest nearly a half hour later and was rushed to George Washington University Hospital, according to the Washington Post. Senator Graham, a staunch ally of President Trump, was scheduled to appear on Meet the Press Sunday morning. He had shown no signs of feeling unwell prior to his death, a staffer told NBC News. So now we've got brief and sudden illness. Did the brief and sudden illness come on last night? Because a staffer said the senator showed no signs of feeling unwell prior to his death, a staffer told NBC News. President Trump on True Social said, Senator Lindsey Graham, one of the greatest people and senators I have ever known, is dead. He was always working and was a true American patriot. Lindsey will be greatly missed, no doubt. Senator Graham's birthday was Thursday. He had just returned from a trip to Ukraine where he met Zelensky to discuss the war with Russia. Zelensky hosted Graham on Friday, where the two had a really good meeting inside the presidential palace. And that's so now this is it. Now this is interesting. So we've got conflicting messages from Lindsey Graham's office. We've got brief and sudden illness, and now another staffer says no illness, no sickness, no symptoms. He wasn't feeling unwell. So which is it? Staffers who were around him, same office, two conflicting releases. Now listen, we don't know, obviously, but I think it is something that has to be looked at. And I'll tell you another thing. Look at the balance of power in the Senate that has been turned upside down. So we have South Carolina, no question that was a seat we were going to hold on to. No more. South Carolina is up in the air now. I don't care what anyone tells you. South Carolina is up in the air now. And then we lose another senator in Kentucky. There's chaos inside the Republican Party. All right. I'd certainly like to hear your thoughts. If you'd like to call in, the number's pinned in the live chat. If you're watching live, you're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Good morning, Brian. Jeff from Maine.
Hey, Jeff.
Something doesn't sound right to me. You know, there was no reports of his sudden brief illness, and all of a sudden he drops dead of a cardiac arrest.
Well. See, what we got here is we've got conflicting information from his office and the radio. Radio call said a brief and sudden illness was the official Twitter. We've got a staffer who says he didn't show any signs of any illness prior to his death. And now we've got a report from the Washington Post that he went into cardiac arrest 30 minutes after the paramedics arrived. So we've got conflict of stories here.
And he was at the hospital when he died. Well, that's the best place to be. You know, why couldn't they save him? You know.
Was he poisoned? I mean, come on. I mean, when you heard this, how long did you start thinking was he assassinated?
I didn't think that, but something wasn't adding up to the story, you know, the conflicting reports. But now that you said that, there's nothing off the table.
Yeah. I mean, I hope that's not true. But the Iranians just attempted to assassinate President Trump last week in Turkey. And at the Ayatollah's funeral, they were also calling for the assassination of Lindsey Graham.
And, you know, and he was up for re-election. He definitely would have won a seat.
No doubt.
And now the governor's going to appoint one to finish his term. But who does the Republicans have with
That's
name
right.
recognition in South Carolina that can run for that seat.
And survive the vetting, because this was the senator's election, the Senate election in the Senate election in South Carolina was almost a formality. Everybody knew Lindsey Graham was going to win. Now you bring in someone, and who knows? The governor appoints someone, they're going to run, and then and maybe they're very well known in South Carolina. Maybe they've even been to Congress before, but they haven't really been vetted like this nationally. And then you find out something in 3 months, and then they're no good. You know what I mean? You never know with the way things work today. So this is a toss-up seat right now, I would say.
And Senator Collins in my state, that's another seat that should be easily won, because the Democrats knowingly ran a guy with a Nazi tattoo.
Well, it should be, but who knows? They haven't announced who they're going to replace him yet. But I can't imagine, after what they've done, that they got anybody you got a chance.
And I'm thinking in South Carolina, I can't even think of anyone as a Republican that would.
And Lindsey Graham was kind of, everybody calls him a bipartisan kind of guy. That helps him in a statewide election. So who knows?
Right.
Who knows what kind of likability factor among the, it's a statewide race that he has across the seats in play as of now. It's not a solid Republican win now. I would say it's in play all the way up to election day, because it's too close. It's just too close to everything. All right, Jeff, I appreciate the call. All right, you take care. All right, let's go. You're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Glory to Jesus Christ, Brian. My name is Rose.
Yes, Rose.
I'm from Ohio.
All right,
now,
Rose from Ohio.
I just got the news maybe an hour ago from my brother.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing that I can come up with is that it's a Russian poison that mimics heart attacks. And the only way to figure out if it is to actually do a thorough blood panel.
Yeah, toxicology. Yeah, I hope that that Kash Patel takes possession of Lindsey Graham's body. Lindsey Graham. You don't think Putin hates Lindsey Graham? Of course. I mean, he's like the leader of the congressional fight against Russia.
Oh, exactly. That's very true. And the fact that Russia, not Russia itself, but Putin and his ilk alike are getting screwed over with this war, because Ukraine is actually coming up as the big dog.
Yeah, exactly. And so with Lindsey Graham, Senator Lindsey Graham has Putin and Iran after him. Remember, Iran was calling for his assassination this week too. So,
exactly.
So
and
yeah.
The funny thing is a Qatari delegate that is against the IRGC,
Mm-hmm.
that's trying to kill Trump, just died as well when Lindsey Graham died.
Really?
After he left Qatar.
Cardiac arrest?
So, yes.
Wow.
There is no way that this is coincidence. And I wasn't a big fan of Lindsey Graham, but I respected where he was coming from his opinions, his beliefs and stuff.
Yeah.
I never, wanted him to die like that. For me, I don't want people to get murdered because of what they think. I want them to get...
Well, I think Lindsey Graham, I'll tell you this about, let me answer all these phones. My phones are ringing off the hook. This is the thing about Lindsey Graham. You could always trust Lindsey Graham to be Lindsey Graham, right? I mean, you always knew where he was going to go, and I think he was pretty forthcoming about where he was going to go. But over the course of time, he's been on President Trump's side a lot, maybe not always, but I never had any beef with Lindsey Graham. He's not like Thune, what Thune's doing right now. You know what I mean? A total obstructionist working for the Democrats.
Mm-hmm. Now, see, for Lindsey Graham, he never hid his agenda. He never hid who he was. He was honest. You know, he never hid it. He's never like, oh, no, we're here, we're this. No, like, soon's a freaking snake in the swamp.
Well, when you look at Putin's hatred of him, the Iranians this week calling for his assassination. I mean, it's ridiculous not to then boom with after a brief and sudden illness, his office said, brief and sudden illness. Then this thing happened. That to me sounds like the poisoning, but you know, we may never know.
And a brief and subtle illness, and this has been evidence from even years before with the USSR. When people have like sudden illnesses, it finds out like years and years later when they actually do a thorough investigation of their bone marrow and stuff, and find that they have those markers of the poison to mimic a heart attack or something. Yep. It was always that poison. So there is. I'm telling the viewers and telling whoever's listening who's not taking the information and is just saying, "Oh, he deserved the blah 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 whatever." No. It wasn't natural. His death and the Qatari.
Well, you know, you guys listen. I talk about people. You know, you hear me a lot because I have a sponsor, right? Life Imaging, and I talk a lot about in 30 to 40% of heart attacks, the first symptom is sudden death, and that's true. And I've known people that have had heart attacks, but anyone I've known that's had heart attacks out of the blue, I don't ever remember a brief and sudden illness before the heart attack. Do you? That's different. Right? I mean, it's different to me. That's a new one.
Exactly. And see, when it comes to Iran, it's never the people that want Trump dead. The people want freedom. The people are fighting. Maybe. And they're still fighting as best as they can without any weapons against the IRGC.
Well, Lindsey Graham, Senator Graham isn't just like pro-Ukraine. Lindsey Graham is an advocate for Ukraine against Russia, right? Exactly. And so this guy, he's got a target on his head from two bad, Putin and the Iranians. So with all due respect to Doc, you don't know nothing. What are you talking about? You don't have any logical thinking ability if you don't say, well, wait a minute, brief and sudden illness. If he had an illness, he wouldn't have traveled to Ukraine.
Exactly. He would have stayed home. He would have went to the doctor, and he would have stayed in the hospital until he was better. And this doesn't make any freaking sense. And with the IRGC, when the IRGC members say that they're going to try and kill you, you have to trust that it's true. Because they have sleeper cells in the United States, in Russia, in all of Europe, Canada. There's even IRGC mullahs in Canada. Yes. When this conflict started, most of them fled.
Look, Mom Donnie's staff was trying to meet with had a meeting set up with the Iranian UN ambassador the other day, and Marco Rubio had to stop it.
Oh, exactly. Because, with Mondani, he's part of them. He's the arm of them. Because when he won in New York, it was their victory. They celebrated it.
Exactly.
That's everything you need to know. And they hold freaking prayers, pedophile prayers to a guy that was illiterate.
Well, listen, I don't want to get sidetracked on too many things, but I'm going to move on. But I appreciate the call. Call again sometime. I always love people from my home state of Ohio.
I definitely will.
All right. Take care. All right. I'm taking the calls in the order in which they were received. If you're new to the program, welcome. Make sure you subscribe. My name is Brian Craig. This is where MAGA comes to talk. And if you're watching live, I take live calls every time you see me in the studio live. You can call toll-free, 888-465-2631. The number is pinned in the live chat, 888-465-2631. We're talking about the sudden, unexpected death of Senator Lindsey Graham. And was he assassinated, or was this truly a heart attack out of the blue. That's what we're discussing. You're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
John from New Jersey. Good morning, Brian. Love your show, everything you do. We love listening to you. This thing with Mitch McConnell missing for 28 days, that's nefarious. And Mitch McConnell, the FBI needs to get on that and start looking at the cameras because this is definitely nefarious.
Well, now, now that Lindsey Graham has died unexpectedly, I would say there's a possible national security threat, and Kash Patel needs to send agents over to Mitch McConnell's hospital room and get some proof of life. I think we've reached that level. These are not just junior senators. These are senior senators who influence global policy. It's a big deal.
And then the girl going back to China and meeting with the vice president, this
McConnell's
is all
wife.
extremely fishy.
Yeah, I agree with you. And we
Exactly.
know that the CCP have inroads inside the Congress like nobody's business. No, there's this country very well could be under. Listen, President Trump is doing incredibly well. We're expected to maintain and gain control in both houses in the election. We have two senior United States senators, one definitely dead. The other one may be dead, maybe brain dead. Laura Loomer reported yesterday that Lindsey Graham is brain dead, that he's an organ failure and being kept alive on life support to drag this out so they don't. So these two United States senators are in the top 10 most powerful people in the United States government. You may not think that, but they are.
And then the lady from Maine, too. The lady from Maine up there, there's stuff going on up there. It's a national emergency, Brian.
It is. All right, take care. Appreciate the call. Yeah. So I'm glad to hear I'm not alone on my thoughts because, this morning I was up early and doing my show prep, and when this story dropped, I was like, what? My first thought was this can't be true, and then when I saw, of course, that it was, this is where my mind went right away as to what very well may have happened. All right, now again, if you'd like to call in, the number is toll free, 888-465-2631, 888-465-2631. It's a toll-free call no matter where you are listening. All right, you're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, good morning.
Oh, hey,
Brian.
Richie.
This is Richie.
Mm-hmm.
I feel terrible because we lost a magnificent voice for
Absolutely.
For us.
Yep.
I mean, there's some senators you never hear about, and then there's Lindsey Graham's, the ones that are vocal, that lead the party. He was one of our leaders.
Mm-hmm.
I want to address. I'm not a coroner. He could have been poisoned. Anything could have happened. But for Jeff in Maine, how could they not save him? Because the man upstairs, Jeff, puts his finger on the day you're going to come back to heaven or hell. In other words, a heart attack. I'm just going to say something. There's instant death. There's like my father who actually had the time to wake up in the middle of the night with chest pains, go into the kitchen, completely put on the stove tea, boil his water, put the tea bag in the thing, and started drinking tea and then collapsed.
Sure.
In other words, when heart attacks, you can have instant death. You can have symptoms, and they tell you.
Yeah, but this is. But no. But this is. See, this is a little different, Richie. You're right. Okay, you're right, and you guys hear me talk about that all the time, right? However, Lindsey Graham's office, what they said it was after a brief and sudden illness.
Well, that's what a heart attack is.
No, excuse me. No. Hold on. Richie, slow down. You're always so quick to be devil's advocate that you don't think. You're right. When it comes to heart attacks and cardiac arrest, there is brief and sudden death, no doubt about it, right?
Exactly.
And you hear me talk about it all the time. I got a commercial copy over here where I talk about it every morning. However, that's not what they said. Brief and sudden illness. I've never heard anyone refer to illness with a cardiac arrest coming up right after out of the blue. Well, of course you have.
I watch because I'm of advanced age, Brian. I watch Legacy.com. Okay.
Yep.
where they talk about the people
Looking
that
for your
died in the
looking
past
for your
week.
friends. See if you see any friends up there.
Well, no, these are. I won't have any friends up there because these are actors and
Oh, yes.
sports figures. I mean, they're famous people. But and then there's some that say brief and sudden illness. I mean, the bottom
No.
line, you could be 100% healthy.
No. There are brief and sudden illnesses that can lead to a cardiac arrest. Yes, but his staff. No. When people have chest pains, it's not described as a brief and sudden illness.
Numbness in the left arm.
No,
I
people
can give
don't
you
describe that as
symptoms,
sudden. That people don't describe that as illness. They say I've been through this so many times. Come on, Richie. They say, oh man, he was having chest pains, he dropped dead. Oh, his arm, he had a feeling in his arm, he dropped dead. Sudden death. Illness is something else.
Well, I don't know, but anyway, I mean, one thing. Okay, forget. I'm not a coroner, so I don't know. But I'm going to say this about the situation with the election, which, I mean, the Democrats are so stupid. They're going to give us a gift because I really feel when the average American sees what they're doing with these crazy people that they're running in these different states, I think the gig is up. I think the average American is not going to tolerate communism or socialist Democrats, whatever you want to call them. They're not for this.
Yeah.
I mean, I cannot, because this is not what we are as a country. As President Trump said on the 4th of July, this is not how we are. These people want to change our way of life. They want to control everything we do, including whether we drive an electric car or whether.
All right. Well, then we're getting off. I want
want
to stay focused where we are, but I do appreciate the call, Richie. And what I said to Richie, I stand by. Richie is what he wants to always be is like a devil's advocate. So whatever the narrative is, he's always trying to do the other side. And I'm not saying he's a devil's advocate on purpose. Maybe he is, but it's also a habit, that people have sometimes. I have never heard, out of everyone I've known that's had a sudden heart attack, I've never heard brief and sudden illness and then. No. No. And I'm curious what the details are of this brief and sudden illness. Right? Was it like a flu-like thing? Was he having other symptoms? When people have chest pains, when they have tingling down their arms and all these things, I don't hear brief and sudden illness. And, when I hear brief and sudden illness, what goes through my mind is some type of symptoms that involve breathing issues, flu-like symptoms, things like this. And you've got to remember, at the Ayatollah's funeral, they were calling for the assassination of President Trump and Lindsey Graham. And they were showing at the Ayatollah's funeral in Iran images of Lindsey Graham with a target on his head. Okay? And we know for a fact that the Iranians plotted an assassination on President Trump that was foiled by the Israelis this week. And Lindsey Graham was just in Ukraine 2 days ago, met with Zelensky on Friday. And I played this clip. I played at the beginning of the program. This very well may be the last time Lindsey Graham spoke to the press. If not the last, it's one of the last. And listen to what he's saying.
We've reached agreement with the White House on a version of the Russian sanctions bill that they will support. It means it's going to become law. So when I get back to Washington, I'm going to go with Senator Blumenthal to the Republican and Democratic leader. See if we can find time to move this Russian sanctions package that would give tools to President Trump to help end this war. There's some things we can do on the technology front to build on the lethality of Ukraine to protect itself from ballistic missile attack. If we did that, combined with creating tools to punish those countries that prop up Putin, that make money off this war, then I think we
Okay, so here he is in what may be his last address to the media, if not the last, one of the last. This was broadcast on Ukrainian television. You know Putin saw this. And Putin has a history of assassinating political opponents. And if I remember correctly, that one guy that died was some kind of nerve agent. So what I would hope we would get soon with Lindsey Graham is this brief and sudden illness. What were the symptoms? What were the symptoms? And I'll tell you, I was talking earlier about how when Doc called, about how people sometimes come from international travel and have cardiac arrest after. And I was talking about Adam the Woo in particular. This is true. But I don't hear brief and sudden illness prior to them having heart attacks after. What happens when people travel long distances? The airlines today. I mean, I've never been a big fan of flying, and I went many years without flying. And then when my daughter moved to Los Angeles, I started flying again. And it's like the planes are half the size they used to be. You have no leg room. And this happens, right, with people. But with Adam the Woo, as an example, while he had a cardiac arrest at night in bed shortly after returning from a long airline trip from Europe, he was out with friends. He was out at Walt Disney World. He went to Hollywood Studios at Walt Disney World. He was walking around. He was at a party at friends' houses. He did a big thing with a friend of his who was in costume as the Grinch through Celebration, Florida, and then he passed away. There was no brief and sudden illness. He looked as healthy and was behaving as healthy as a horse. When they say brief and sudden illness, that's not a pain down the arm. That's not chest pains. A brief and sudden illness, to me, that means symptoms of something, right? Symptoms of something. So what I'd like to know is, what are those symptoms? So let me see if we get any more information here. I'm going to pull up. Let me see here. Let me pull this story up because I want to say, this story is developing, and I really do think that that Kash Patel needs to take possession of Lindsey Graham's body immediately and put it under guard. Nobody can go near this body. There needs to be a major toxicology scan done at the highest level. And Kash Patel needs to send FBI agents to Mitch McConnell's hospital and get a proof of life and find out what's going on. Okay, this is the latest from Fox News. Okay, this was just updated 9 minutes ago. So some of this we may have known, but maybe there's something in here we don't know since they just updated it less than 10 minutes ago. Here's the headline. Longtime GOP Senator Lindsey Graham dies at 71 after brief and sudden illness. See, brief and sudden illness again. Okay. Lindsey Graham died at age 71. An influential voice on national security. Netanyahu, how will he get replaced? They're telling all the people are up in the middle of the night more. And I'll tell you, have you noticed 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, you're hearing from people like Newt Gingrich and others. Their top Republicans were on Fox News 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. Okay, here we got Fox News. U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham has died at the age of 71. Following what his office described, here we go, as a brief and sudden illness. Now, there's no way that people listening to me right now don't know people who have died suddenly from heart attacks. Have you ever heard it described as a brief and sudden illness and then they drop dead of a heart attack? Usually what I hear happens is, they were on the treadmill, boom, drop dead, cardiac arrest, heart attack, right? We had a Democrat governor of Florida, Lawton Childs, died on the treadmill, right? Heart attack, boom. Those are the kind of things you hear. Oh, he was outside in the heat playing golf, boom, dropped dead from a heart attack. I've never heard this brief and sudden illness out of the blue. after traveling to a place as far as Ukraine. No, we need more. When I hear illness, I think symptoms. Symptoms. Brief and sudden death, but brief and sudden illness is different. Words are important. They really are. U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican, South Carolina, has died at the age of 71 following what his office described as a brief and sudden illness. This is Fox News I'm reading from. In a statement released early Sunday morning, Graham's office confirmed his passing and said his family is requesting privacy as they mourn. The longtime South Carolina Republican had served in the U.S. Senate since 2003, after first being elected in 2002 and was seeking a fifth Senate term after winning the Republican primary last month. See, we're past the primary. So this death of Lindsey Graham happened after the primary. That's what I'm telling you, is this seat is now up for grabs. And even if we win it, we've lost the senior senator, right? Whoever comes in won't have seniority if we even win it now. President Donald Trump paid tribute to Graham on Truth Social, calling him a true American patriot and saying he would be greatly missed. South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster also honored Graham, describing him as an irreplaceable leader and loyal friend. I agree with all that. During his more than 3 decades in elected office, Graham served on several influential Senate committees, including Appropriations, Judiciary, and Environment and Public Works. Before joining the Senate, he represented South Carolina's 3rd Congressional District in the U.S. House. Graham remained active in foreign policy until his death. He met with Zelensky on Friday, was scheduled to appear on Meet the Press today. A veteran in the U.S. Air Force, Air National Guard, and Air Force Reserve, Graham retired as a colonel in 2015 after 33 years of military service, including deployments during the Gulf War, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Yeah, no, this is, the ballot. They shot Trump and Butler because they couldn't beat him, too, right? I did you guys see my video at the Donald Trump International Airport here in Palm Beach that I posted yesterday? Yesterday morning, 24 hours ago at this very moment, I was at Donald John Trump International Airport in Palm Beach. And I talk about this in that video. When they shot President Trump and Butler, what happened before that? They tried everything to stop him from running and to turn supporters like you and me against him. They arrested him, they got mugshots, they did all this crap, right? And when the polls told them that President Trump could not be beaten, all of a sudden, on a Saturday in Pennsylvania, he got shot. These evildoers will stop at nothing. They will stop at nothing. And when we have 2 senior United States senators down, we have 2 senior seats in the United States Senate up for grabs. We have a 100% safe seat in South Carolina after the primary, where the senior senator dies after what is described by his own staff on his official X for the senator, brief and sudden illness, followed by brief and sudden illness. President Trump's been up all night. Do you think President Trump's thinking possible assassination here? Think about how the balance of power has been impacted. And I'll tell you this, another one. What is the negative? And now, I don't believe we should be involved in Ukraine, right? I'm a longtime supporter of opposing any U.S. involvement in the Russian-Ukraine war, okay? But Lindsey Graham did not agree with that. Lindsey Graham was, in the United States, the most prominent advocate for the United States to fight with Ukraine, right? How does this impact Ukraine's war effort moving forward? They've lost their chief advocate. And an advocate is more than being able to get on TV. An advocate is having the ear of the president, being a senior United States senator, which is a big freaking deal, okay? To be a senior United States senator. These are incredibly powerful people who can get things done. Ukraine is in a much weaker position today than it was on Friday. Much weaker. There is no one in Washington fighting for Ukraine like Lindsey Graham was. No one. Right? You may say, well, the Democrats support. Yeah, but see, Lindsey Graham, the Republicans run this country. This is a country run by Republicans. By the way, MAGA Republicans. And Lindsey Graham is a Republican. And he's not a rhino. Lindsey Graham's not a rhino. You may not always agree with him, but he's not a rhino. You know, I told the lady that called from Ohio earlier in the show, I said, you could always trust Lindsey Graham to be Lindsey Graham. You always knew where he was, where he stood, and where he was going to go. Right? So I've never had a beef with Lindsey Graham. I mean, that doesn't mean you may not be able to remind me of something where I took issue with him, but that's different than having a beef. I have a beef with Thune. Thune's a creep. Thune's an obstructionist. Lindsey Graham was not an obstructionist. So Lindsey Graham has the ability to get tanks and rockets built and sent to Ukraine. That's how powerful a United States Senator in his position with his party and his influence is. That's over now. You know, when someone dies suddenly that's in a powerful position, you know, and you're looking to say, well, what happened here? You look at who benefits, right? So Russia just had a major military victory in the war against Ukraine with the death of Lindsey Graham. Would you agree with that or not? I'll tell you another one. Iran, and don't forget, Iran and Russia are allies and have been for many years. Iran just had a victory with the death of Lindsey Graham as well. Lindsey Graham was a strong advocate for Israel and a strong advocate against this fanatical regime in Iran, and a strong advocate supporting President Trump's efforts against Iran. So Iran and Russia, with the death of Lindsey Graham, have just won a major, major victory. Both of them in these wars. No question about it. Right. He's too important of a person. This isn't just some regular guy. Now, if they had just said he died suddenly, cardiac arrest, heart attack, while I may be a little suspicious, I wouldn't be as I am, since they said after a brief and sudden illness, they came out of the blue, or he wouldn't have traveled to Ukraine. After a brief and sudden illness, his office said. That's what sent the sirens up over my head. After a brief and sudden illness. When I hear brief and sudden illness and sudden death by a global leader, a national leader, someone as prominent as Senator Lindsey Graham, with the examples I just gave you, I think poisoning. Remember, the Iranians were calling for his assassination too last week at the funeral, not just Trump's. And they did attempt to assassinate President Trump, the Iranians, last week in Turkey. We know that's a fact. But who else benefits? Possibly the Democrats now. And the rhino establishment. You know, because Lindsey Graham, that he's running for re-election, it wasn't even a question. The Senate race in South Carolina that Lindsey Graham, he just won the primary, he was running in, it was almost a formality, this election. Lindsey Graham was so a shoo-in to win this seat. Now it's up for grabs. It's up for grabs because Lindsey Graham has a reputation of being a bipartisan guy. There's a lot of Democrats in South Carolina, and a Senate race is a statewide race. Okay? So if somebody ends up, see, he won the primary, Lindsey Graham. They've already had the primary. So the governor, what's the governor, McMaster? The governor of South Carolina is going to appoint an interim senator to finish out the term. They may or may not be the candidate come November, but Lindsey Graham has already won the South Carolina primary for the Republican Party. So someone's going to be plugged in on the eve of the election. Really, it's pretty close. And whoever they appoint is going to get a level of scrutiny that has never been seen in the South Carolina Senate race since this Me Too and all of this. Because the Democrats and even the hardcore rhinos, because I know Lindsey might go with the Democrats from time to time, but Lindsey Graham, I often said about Lindsey Graham always gravitates towards the strong male role model who's in charge at that particular moment. It used to be John McCain, then it was President Trump. So now the Democrats and the rhinos, they've got an opportunity. So the governor picks someone, and I'll tell you this, whoever it is, they better be a squeaky clean Marine or their lives going to be over, because as soon as the governor of South Carolina announces who the replacement is going to be, oh boy. That's when the vetting is going to really happen, right? Because the seat in South Carolina is in play. It's in play for the Democrats now, and it's in play for the Rhino Republicans as well. They weren't running anyone. Now, whoever he appoints may be a member of the House, maybe somebody that's been in the Senate before. Who knows? Maybe a former... Whoever the governor appoints, they may look like the most perfect person to you or me. But maybe they aren't to the people statewide in South Carolina to win a statewide race right now. A lot of Democrats, when it comes to the Senate race, may have stayed home like a lot of California Republicans because they figure, what's the point? Lindsey's going to win. Why bother? Now you lose that. Who knows where a lot of Democrats are going to... Maybe a lot of Democrats will show up and vote who otherwise wouldn't, or vote for a Democrat. Because, when people go and vote, they don't like to waste their vote. They don't want to vote for a loser. So a lot of people, a lot of Democrats probably voted for Lindsey Graham in the general elections because they don't want to waste their vote and vote for some loser that had no chance of winning and who's a Democrat. That's over now. It's over. This seat could go to a Democrat, boom, just like that. Just like that in South Carolina. So so Putin's benefited, the Iranians have benefited, and the Democrats now have a seat within reach. If whoever the Republican governor appoints, it does not necessarily mean they're going to be the one that runs in November. We don't know who's going to run in November, right? So when this person, they could have been in the Senate before. They could have been governor before. Could be anyone. But because the seat's in play, their spouse, and their entire family are going to be investigated like nobody's business. Like they're getting a top security clearance for the Manhattan Project in World War II. And if they find something, we may not find out about it until October. God forbid it's Trey Gowdy. I hope it's not Trey Gowdy. First of all, I can't even stand looking at Trey Gowdy. He does this Fox show. He's a big Trump hater. Big Trump hater. But he's had so much work done, he looks like he's transitioning into something. And I don't mean into a woman. I mean transitioning into something not human. When I see Trey Gowdy on Fox, I look away. I can't look at him. It's like Medusa. And he's a big Trump hater. That's the kind of senator the rhinos would like. Trey Gowdy, oh man, it could be anybody from around the country. So, and then we've got the problem of Mitch McConnell. Obviously, the rhinos are up to a plot with Mitch McConnell to stop a special election and getting a MAGA senator elected to finish out Mitch McConnell's term. Think about it. Think about what this could do. Do you think the rhinos are just sitting back? What if we get 2 MAGA interim senators, Kentucky and South Carolina? Thune could find himself not being the majority leader anymore. And then boom, we could get the Save America Act passed. We really, truly could. So the power vacuum in the Senate and the way things have been turned upside down is at a level I don't think people are necessarily appreciating. Here's Lindsey Graham speaking in Kiev. I know they say Kiev. I say Kiev. Just a couple days ago.
I'm pleased to announce, as of about 30 minutes ago, we've reached agreement with the White House on a version of the Russian sanctions bill that they will support. It means it's going to become law. So when I get back to Washington,
I mean, look at this. He's got a Ukraine flag on his lapel. He's got one of those U.S.-Ukraine flags on his lapel. And then he dies out of the blue like some political opponent of Putin.
I'm going to go with Senator Blumenthal to the Republican and Democratic leader to see if we can find time to move this Russian sanctions package that would give tools to President Trump to help end this war.
Yeah. So, and when Lindsey, by the way, if you're new to the program, welcome. My name is Brian Craig. This is where MAGA comes to talk. Please subscribe. You'll enjoy my content. I'm live every morning of the week in the studio taking live calls like I've been doing this morning, and I'm here every weekday morning as well. If you'd like to call in and you're watching live, of course, the number is pinned in the live chat, 888-465-2631, 888-465-2631. But, you know, when Lindsey Graham is talking about a way for, what he said is he has a way for President Trump to end this war. Does that mean in a way that's favorable to Russia or Ukraine? A way that's favorable to Ukraine, I promise you. Okay? Now, I'm not going to show the images that the Iranians have been showing. But the Iranians have been calling for his assassination. Laura Loomer posted to X. The Iranians have publicly called for Senator Lindsey Graham to be assassinated. He was traveling abroad to a war zone the last few days to try to end the war between Ukraine and Russia. His staff said he passed away from a brief and sudden illness. This is Laura Loomer. Was he poisoned by a foreign adversary, either abroad or upon returning to the U.S.? There should be an investigation into his death, especially after Iran called for his death less than 1 week ago. What do his staff mean by brief and sudden illness? Poison? That's Laura Loomer. Exactly. So, no, I don't think this is far-fetched at all. I hope it's not. And I'll tell you something. If he was poisoned by one of these groups, we may never know. We may never know. That may not be released to the public, even if President Trump finds out that it's true. Because, think about it. If it came out that Putin poisoned Lindsey Graham, that's an act of war. He is a sitting United States senator. And President Trump may say, hey, we've got to keep that under wraps because I'd have to go to war with Russia. And we don't want to go to war with Russia if we don't have to. These are things that you've got to consider. You know, you've seen, think about this now. Look at everything they've done to try to stop President Trump over the years. They shot him. They tried to shoot him again. There have been over a dozen assassination attempts on President Trump, sometimes by foreign powers, sometimes by never-Trumpers. One recent one by an illegal Mexican, the UFC assassination plot. One of those dreamers, one of those precious migrants of the Democrats. You've seen everything they've done to stop President Trump. And the death of Lindsey Graham is a blow to the MAGA movement. Regardless of what anybody says, President Trump has lost an ally in the Senate that he could count on. This is a blow to the MAGA movement in the immediacy. You know, it's really awful. You know, the way politics have gotten in this country, and it's all because of the left. You know, everything we're dealing with in this country that's negative involving politics is because of the left. I mean, you know, you look at the Make America Great Again agenda, right? And I throw this out to you Democrats out there. If you are an American citizen, I don't mean a North American, a South American, I mean an American citizen. If you are an American citizen, what is President Trump advocating for that you could possibly be against? What in the Make America Great Again agenda could you possibly be against? He didn't start the war in Iran, by the way. Right? Shutting down the border from the invasion, giving us the lowest murder rate in 126 years, lowering the murder rate in Washington, D.C., cleaning up the graffiti in Washington, D.C., giving us the largest tax cut in history, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. What about this agenda rises up to a level of the hostility that Democrats, like these idiots on The View and others, have towards him? Taking a position against birth tourism. And really, most American citizens, and there aren't as many as you think, but most American citizens that are strongly opposed to President Trump and his agenda, I don't think they can articulate it. They'll throw out some noise to try to sound like they've got some credible grievance with him. But I think most of them are opposed to President Trump really just out of habit. And they really can't articulate how or why. But I'll say this about Lindsey Graham. You may not always have agreed with Lindsey Graham, but he was with the president a lot. He was with the president a lot, and a very important advocate for him in the Senate. Now we got 2 Senate seats in play. So what's going to happen? You know, with losing these 2 seats, the Democrats, they're viewing this as an opportunity that they may be able to not just take back the seat in South Carolina, but they might be able to get the majority. You know, you look at what's been going on with Mitch McConnell. Think about this now. You know what's been going on with Mitch McConnell. We've all seen it. The level of corruption with that. This is crazy. You know, and this cover up with Mitch McConnell and his hospitalization and his illness, whether he's dead or alive or brain dead or an organ failure, they won't let us know. I'll tell you, Scott Jennings, if it comes out that he's been brain dead all along. Scott Jennings is done on CNN. He will blow whatever credibility he has left after the claim of that 17-minute phone call the other day. But we've seen the links, this whole thing with Mitch McConnell, this cover-up is about stopping President Trump, stopping the SAVE Act, and stopping the MAGA agenda, particularly the SAVE Act right now. Right? We get 2 MAGA senators in there, we can get that SAVE Act passed before November. There's a lot of powerful people whose worlds have been turned upside down, and we've seen the links that they have gone in the past 11 years against... They bugged President Trump's home in New York City at Trump Tower. They bugged his home and headquarters in New York City when he ran for president the first time. They broke into his house in Mar-a-Lago. They broke into his safe at Mar-a-Lago, dumped out his desk drawers, went through Melania's underwear drawer and closet. They tossed Barron's room at Mar-a-Lago. And oh yeah, they shot him. They tried to put him in jail. They hauled him in for mugshots. They got him sued by lunatics. They even went after the property value of Mar-a-Lago. I mean, look at what they've done. Look at what they've done to try to stop the MAGA agenda. You don't think they would do this? Of course they would. These are sick, twisted, whooped people. One thing you guys got to understand about President Trump, that those of you that watch and listen to me regularly do understand. President Trump is the first president in any of our lifetimes, and I believe in the history of the United States presidency, but certainly without question in our lifetimes and probably in the whole presidency, from George Washington on, President Trump is the first president to truly be chosen by the people and not the political parties. See, what the primary process has become in the convention nominating process is about the 2 political parties picking the candidates, not the people. We've seen that the primary is just a show. It's not real. Kamala Harris didn't run in the primary, didn't get 1 vote. They gave her the nomination. Right? Graham Plattner. Graham Plattner, the Nazi. He won the primary. They got him to drop out. And they're going to have and the Democrats are going to plug someone in to put on the ballot to run as the Democrat senator, the Democrat nominee for Senate, that did not win the nomination. Didn't get a single vote. And the same thing's about to happen in South Carolina. Lindsey Graham has won his primary. And now the establishment, the uniparty, a committee of how many, who knows who they are, we're going to get a committee who's going to decide who the nominee for Republican senator is in South Carolina. See, there's this, I was, last week, before the Nazi Plattner dropped out, and he dropped out before the deadline so they could get their choice on the ballot. Right? I told you, I said, this is a very dangerous precedent with Graham Plattner, because it'll be the second time that Kamala was the first, now Plattner. The Democrats don't, or the establishment, the uniparty, the establishment, they don't like how the primary went. Someone won the primary. They're the nominee, and now there's something new in play they don't like. So now they've established that they can just plug anybody in at any particular time. They're doing it with Graham Plattner. They did it with Kamala with Biden, and now Lindsey Graham. Right? And those of you out there on the left with your no kings nonsense that you're always talking about. Are we really a free country if the primary process is being totally bypassed by the uniparty? And you know what? It's being accepted by the country. Now, Lindsey Graham has died after his primary, so they got cover. But there's this new political, in the United States, what law is about is the laws of the United States are much more than just the exact law on a book, right? So much of the law is based on legal precedents. That's why when cases are argued, oftentimes the Supreme Court, they're always citing past case. They talk about case law, right? Blank versus blank, and blank versus blank. And John versus the state of Mississippi, this was, the court ruled this. That becomes the law. And what we're finding now is, what the uniparty, because this is what we're fighting is the uniparty, right? The uniparty, now remember, when the polls showed that Trump was unbeatable in the primaries, look at what happened in 2024. I want you to think about this now. And this is how it fits into what happened here with Lindsey Graham and what I'm talking about today. They tried to intimidate President Trump from running. And those phony charges and arrests that began in the beginning, with the federal and the New York charges and all that, they thought that MAGA opinion would turn against him and that he wouldn't run because of it. Then he announced he was running. And they put up two very flawed candidates, really, with the front runners against him, DeSantis and Nikki Haley. And when the primary started for the 2024 race, they still were trying to discredit him, turn public opinion against him by getting him arrested and all this business. And their internal polling, their internal scientific polling told them that not only is he unbeatable, he's stronger than ever, and there's nothing they can do to stop him, and that's when they shot him in Butler. So when they were unsuccessful with assassinating him, he went on to get the nomination. What happened? Well, he had a debate with Joe Biden, the nominee who won the primaries, the sitting president. And he creamed him. Then they got another bunch of polls that said Biden can't win. It's impossible. He's out of it. He did so bad. We need a do-over. So after the entire primary process, they gave the nomination to a woman who didn't get a single vote, Kamala Harris. And it's not even questioned. And that's just the way it is. Oh yeah, that's how it works. Don't ask any questions. That's how it works. Oh no, it's legal. How do you know? It's never been done before. Don't worry about it. It's legal. That's how it's done. Oh, okay. So look at the extreme that they went through to try to stop President Trump. It all failed. They're desperate to take back the Senate. And Senate's hard to take over because they got 6-year terms. People aren't in play. All the polls are coming out showing we're doing very well in both houses. They see Graham Plattner he's polling well. This Marlboro Man Act, yeah, he's got the Nazi tattoo, but people don't care. He's doing well. Then all of a sudden they started doing polling. And Graham Plattner was not doing as well as they thought. Graham Plattner was not only not doing well against Susan Collins in Maine, he was hurting their other races around the country. But he already won the primary. So all of a sudden, a Democrat socialist comes out and says she was raped by him. She had said this before, but they wouldn't print it, but now they're going to print it. And boom, a couple days before the deadline so they can change the ballot, he drops out. Now they're going to plug in someone in the Democrat race for Senate in Maine who did not win one vote in the primary. Again, doing away with that. Mitch McConnell's in the hospital Now, he's not running for re-election. There'd be a new senator in January, but he ended up in the hospital. Laura Loomer has reported multiple times in the last week that he is brain dead. She reported yesterday, early yesterday, may have been late Friday, but Laura Loomer reported that her sources, her White House source, Laura Loomer specifically said, her source at the White House said that Mitch McConnell is brain dead and is in organ failure and is being kept alive. And he's being kept alive because they're trying to avoid the special election that would likely give them a MAGA Republican senator in Kentucky. So you have the Uniparty totally blocking the legal process of a special election in Kentucky right now with Mitch McConnell. We got Scott Jennings telling us a BS story on television. Oh, I talked to him for 17 minutes. He's so with it. We got all these details. Nobody buys that crap. So they're going around the entire legal process, the legal process in Kentucky. Now, Lindsey Graham is dead. Lindsey Graham is dead. You know, Lindsey Graham, one of the strongest allies of President Trump in all of Washington, D.C., definitely in the Senate. This guy has more enemies than anyone, right, other than Trump. Iran hates him and wants him dead. They're calling for his assassination of Lindsey Graham just this week. You know Putin wants him dead because he's the strongest advocate for Ukraine in the United States government, and he's a senior guy with the ear of the president. And we see the Uniparty is trying to stop MAGA in the Senate big time with the Graham Plattner, with Mitch McConnell. The polls are against them. So to sit around and not accept what very well could be an assassination, you're being naive. You know, at the beginning of the stream, I said, you know, if I were to put the odds on it right now, I'd say it's 50-50 chance that Lindsey Graham was assassinated. I think I might change that to 60-40 chance that he was assassinated based on the things I've been talking about on the program here. It's crazy. I don't want it to. Now, we may never know. We may never know. Because President Trump may not want it to be known, depending on who was behind it. Or maybe it was such a good job they're not able to determine it. I don't know. But when Lindsey Graham, it didn't say he just came back from Ukraine and he was out for a walk and he dropped dead from cardiac arrest. It didn't say he just came back from Ukraine and he was on the treadmill and he dropped dead. His staff said, Lindsey Graham's staff said on his official X, after a brief and sudden illness, I have never heard that with someone from a sudden heart attack. They were out walking the dog, they had a heat stroke, next thing they were dead. They were at the gym lifting weights, they got on the treadmill, got off, boom, dead. I've never heard after a brief and sudden illness, they were dead. I'm sorry. No. This is, the more I talk about it, the more I think something's fishy here. All right, let's go back to the phones. You're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Good morning, Brian. This is Dave in Rural Palm.
Hey, Dave.
You know, this thing about him passing away from a heart attack. You know, a couple of years ago in Europe, there were a bunch of conservatives that were losing their life in weird ways, and I don't put anything past the left if they want to win. And we heard things about the CIA and a heart attack gun and everything else like that. So I think you're probably pretty close to that 60-40.
Yeah. I mean, he's got a lot of enemies.
Yeah.
It could be Putin. It could be Iran. It could be the Uniparty. You know, we see there's fishy things going on with Mitch McConnell to stop MAGA from having power in the Senate. You know, if it wasn't for the Mitch McConnell situation, I wouldn't be as suspicious with the death of Lindsey Graham.
Yeah, and 71 isn't really old. I don't know if he was known as a drinking smoker or anything, but that's still kind of young. I mean, it could happen to anybody, but, you know, with everything that's happened with political people in the past decade, I don't put it, that's a real possibility.
And when his staff says brief and sudden illness, that's also weird too. A brief and sudden, that sounds like poison to me. Brief and sudden illness?
Yeah, it's just odd. He hasn't had any health concerns, at least publicly known. So,
All right, appreciate the call.
I think you're probably right.
All right, take care, man. All right. If you're new to the program, welcome. My name is Brian Craig. This is where MAGA comes to talk. And if you're new, please subscribe. You'll love this channel. I live stream in the studio, taking live calls like I'm doing now every morning of the week and weekends. Okay. So, and the number is toll-free and pinned in the live chat. And those of you that are already subscribed, if you could do me the favor of liking the video, if you don't mind. All right, let's go. You're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, I'm calling from Ohio.
Yes, Ohio.
How you doing? I was just calling in to say it's really puzzling. I don't know why they're not giving out more information. Was he sick? Was he assassinated? What happened?
Well, we don't know. His staff said he came back from Ukraine, had a brief and sudden illness. They called the paramedics. 30 minutes after the paramedics arrived, he went into cardiac arrest. So goes the latest report. They got to do a toxicology. I mean, I don't know how long it takes. There needs to be an emergency toxicology done on Lindsey Graham.
And I quickly wanted to ask you, how do you feel about older people being in Senate and Congress? Is it time to finally get an age limit on these
Well,
guys?
what's older to you? At what age?
I mean, 71, I'm not going to lie. There's a lot of people that don't see the age of 71. I heard you just say he was pretty young, but he's...
How old are you? How old are you?
I'm 55.
55?
So
okay, you and I are the same age.
My days are coming to an end.
No, they're not.
That's how I feel.
What? You and I are the same age. I'm 55. My life's just beginning, man.
I smoke a pack a day, so.
Okay. So you're okay. Well, I don't smoke. Okay.
Okay. Well,
you know, so yeah, but you're making it. You're trying to end things with smoking. You know, I mean, give me a break. No, 71. When I was a kid, 71 was old, but it's not so old anymore. And most people live beyond that. You know, now you're living an unhealthy lifestyle, and you're doing yourself in with that smoking. So you're trying to say, well, you know, people die that age anyway, just to kind of legitimize your addiction.
No, I'm not legitimizing my addiction. I'm trying to call out the hypocrisy in us accepting older senators and Congress.
Well, you now, as a smoker, maybe you don't have this as much as other people, but you know, there's an old saying that is very true. With age comes what? With age comes what?
A lot of experience.
Oh, no. See, I told you he's a smoker. He doesn't. Wisdom. With age comes wisdom. So what do you want to have? A bunch of kids running the government? Are you kidding me? No, with age comes wisdom. And look at President Trump. He's 80 years old. I can't keep up with him.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm really surprised about Trump. He looks really good for an 80-year-old. He actually can make sense, stick with a sentence, and he's not a bad guy. I mean, he's in great shape, I think.
You know, and when you look at people that smoke versus non-smokers, you know, of course, if you're smoking, you probably got all kinds of problems. You know, and you're more likely to get other things. But no. 71 is young, too young to die.
How do you feel about Lindsey Graham having an interventionist ideology? How do you feel about
that's a very vague thing.
Wars?
That's a very vague thing. Be more specific.
I mean, he says he's a part of MAGA, which we understand that, but we have to realize about 8-9 years ago, he was calling for Trump to step aside, and he shouldn't run, and he's dangerous.
Well, the thing about
We
Lindsey
have to
Graham.
take
Okay,
things in context,
a couple
and
things.
I would like some honesty when it comes to that.
Let me tell you. Are you new to my program?
Yes.
Okay, you always get honesty with me. Okay, and this is what I've said about Lindsey Graham over the years, and I said it today, but I've always said this over the years on the program. You can always trust Lindsey Graham to be Lindsey Graham. And what Lindsey Graham has a history of doing is gravitating on the side of the strongest male in the party at the time. Okay? So when Trump's in power, he's with Trump. When Trump's on his way out, he was with McCain or Biden. You understand what I mean? And Trump is in a very strong power position right now, and he's been very loyal during those. You can always count on Lindsey Graham to be Lindsey Graham. The other thing about him, I do not agree with Lindsey Graham on the Ukrainian war. I don't think we should. I think it's a civil war we have no business being involved in. And
Russia's a Christian country. I don't think Russia is a threat to America.
No, they're not. Russia's not a threat to America. I agree with that. We have no business involved in what I consider to be a civil war. It's not fighting for freedom. Zelensky is maybe 2 years past his term at this point. You know, he's a dictator at this point. He has suspended elections. There's no freedom of press. There's no freedom of religion in Ukraine. He suspended all of this, and he's been in office 1 or 2 years past his term. No, I'm opposed to any U.S. involvement in Ukraine, and I have been since day one, and I've been very vocal about that. Yeah, but that doesn't change things. What we're talking about now is, there's major people, there's big people that hate Lindsey Graham, right? Putin, who has a history of
from the left.
Well, I'll get to that. I'll go through the list of. Putin hates Lindsey Graham, okay?
And I understand why.
And Putin has that doesn't mean it's okay. If he poisoned him? And Putin has a history of of poisoning political opponents. Iran, within the last week at the Ayatollah's funeral, was calling for the assassination of Lindsey Graham, as well as President Trump. And the Iranians had an assassination attempt foiled on the president last week by the Israelis. The left in the Uniparty, because right now Lindsey Graham's been a strong supporter of President Trump. The Democrats and the Uniparty have been in all kinds of monkey business over control in the Senate, with what they just did with Graham Plattner, what's going on with McConnell. So there's three major suspects that could be involved in a Lindsey Graham assassination: the Uniparty, Iran, and Putin.
And yes, 100%. And really quickly, this is a little off topic, but with the Ukraine thing, they just assassinated somebody in Monaco, or attempted to.
Yes.
And they killed their agent in Kyiv. And the left media and even the right media is not covering. And
it's been out there. Just there's other things we're just more interested in. So this could be retribution by the Russians, because Lindsey Graham has been a major. He's almost Ukrainian. He's got the damn Ukrainian flag on his lapel. Right this week. Right. So that could be Russian retaliation for the Ukrainian hit.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mess.
Well, listen, welcome to the program, all right? And call me again sometime.
All right, thank you, buddy. Have a great day.
All right, take care. And by the way, guys, please, if you're new, welcome and subscribe. And everyone, please like the video. When you like the video, you get the video recommended to people that have not yet found my channel. So liking the video helps me out a lot, guys. It helps grow the channel and other people. And I hope, if you haven't already, please check out my video. I went yesterday to Donald Trump International Airport here in Palm Beach and gave a complete tour of Donald Trump International Airport. It was very exciting. And it was the first complete tour of it. And I was very excited. And I'm very lucky. I can't wait to fly out of it. Next time I fly, I'm going to try to fly out of that airport, Donald John Trump International Airport, and it's the video before this one on the channel. It's my vlog from yesterday. If you have not seen it, And those of you that are new also, I am here 7 days a week, Monday through Friday and the weekends in studio, taking live calls right here like I'm doing right now. And all opinions are welcome. You don't have to agree. You can disagree and call me too. And all opinions are welcome. And all the calls are screenless and unvetted. When you call, no one answers the phone. I just put you on hold. And when you hear me say, what's your name? Where are you calling from? That's the first time anybody knows who's on hold, okay? I even turn off the caller ID so I don't even see who's on the line. And, you know, that is the format of the program. It has been for over 30 years. So those of you that are new, that take issue with anything you hear me say, you have no excuses, because you can call me out at any time on anything that I say. Well, listen, guys, I will be keeping track and keeping updated and cover this all day long. So if there's any breaking news, don't be surprised if you see me back up here later in the day. So not only subscribe, please click that notification bell. My name is Brian Craig. This is where MAGA comes to talk. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time.